"Marry me for one day," Emily Carter whispered, because the man who had once rejected her was standing 10 feet away, holding a contract that could steal her freedom before midnight. The royal moon ball glittered around her as if nothing were wrong. Crystal chandeliers cast silver light across polished marble. An orchestra played beneath the balcony, and representatives from every major pack filled the hall in formal black and gold. Yet Emily heard only Mason Hale's voice behind her. "You can stop pretending now," he said. "Your father signed the agreement. You belong in Silver Creek." Her wrist still carried the red imprint of his fingers, though she had pulled away before anyone could call the moment a scene. Mason had always understood appearances. Years ago, he had rejected her before their entire pack, because an ordinary Omega could not strengthen his future rule. Now that rumors of her mother's rare healing blood had surfaced, he had returned with polished manners, expensive lawyers, and a document bearing her late father's signature. No apology, no shame, only ownership disguised as duty. Emily looked toward the raised platform at the far end of the ballroom. Alpha King Ethan Blackwood stood beside his dark throne, silent among advisors and guards. He wore no crown, yet no one could mistake him for anything but the most powerful man in the room. His black hair was neatly swept back, his steel blue eyes calm, and his stillness carried more authority than Mason's loudest command. Emily had never spoken to him. She had only heard the stories. They said he rejected every political match placed before him. They said he could silence a council with one glance. Tonight she needed him to do something far stranger. Before courage could abandon her, Emily crossed the ballroom. Conversation softened as guests noticed the unknown Omega walking directly toward the king. Mason called her name, but she kept moving. Each step felt too loud. Each breath felt borrowed. When she reached the platform, Ethan's gaze lowered to the mark on her wrist, then lifted to her face. He did not ask why she was trembling. He did not tell her to kneel. "Your Majesty," she said, forcing the words through a tight throat, "I need a favor." One dark eyebrow rose. Behind her, Mason pushed through the gathering crowd. "Emily, step away from him." She had spent years obeying voices that made her feel small. This time she did not turn around. "Marry me for one day," she whispered. The orchestra stopped in the middle of a note. 100 wolves seemed to forget how to breathe. Ethan studied her with an expression she could not read. Then his attention shifted to Mason, who held up the contract like a weapon made of paper. "She is already promised," Mason declared. "Her family's agreement is legally binding." Ethan's eyes returned to Emily. "Are you asking for protection?" he said quietly. "Or permission to choose your own future?" The question struck deeper than she expected. No one had ever separated those things for her. "Both," she answered. Something almost like approval touched his face. Then the Alpha King smiled, slow and certain. "One day," he murmured. "Forever sounds better." He rose from his throne. The entire hall bowed by instinct, but Emily remained standing, held in place by his steady gaze. Ethan extended his hand, palm open, waiting rather than demanding. "Close the doors," he told the royal guard. "Summon the moon priestess." Mason's confidence vanished. "You cannot be serious." Ethan did not look at him. "Miss Carter," he said, his hand still offered. "The choice is yours." Emily stared at the open palm of the most feared alpha in the kingdom. Then, for the first time in her life, she stepped forward because she wanted to. Emily placed her hand in Ethan's, and the moment their palms touched, warmth moved through her like sunlight beneath winter glass. She nearly pulled away, startled by the sudden certainty in her chest, but Ethan's fingers closed gently around hers. Not possessive. Steady. The royal guard sealed the ballroom doors while murmurs swept through the gathered packs. Mason stood near the center aisle, the contract still raised in his hand, but the paper no longer looked powerful. It looked small. "This ceremony cannot happen," he protested. "A royal marriage requires preparation, witnesses, and approval from the High Council." "We have witnesses," Ethan replied. "The council serves the crown, and the bride has already given the only approval that matters." His gaze settled on Emily. "Unless she has changed her mind." Every eye turned toward her. The pressure of so many stares made her pulse race. Yet Ethan did not tug her forward or speak for her. He simply waited. Emily looked at Mason and remembered the night he had rejected her before Silver Creek Pack, calling her unsuitable for the future he deserved. Now he wanted her because of a rumor about her bloodline. Ethan, a king who could command the entire room, was asking what she wanted. "I have not changed my mind," she said. The tall doors beside the throne opened, and the moon priestess entered in a silver robe that shimmered like frost. Her white hair fell in a long braid, and her calm gray eyes studied Emily before moving to Ethan. "Your Majesty," she said, "which vow do you request?" Ethan answered without hesitation, "The covenant of free hearts." A quiet gasp passed through the elders. Emily leaned closer to him. "What does that mean?" "Neither person can be claimed through rank, debt, or family promise," he explained. "Only choice." Mason's expression tightened. "She is bound by her father's agreement." The priestess extended her hand. "Then present it." Mason carried the document forward with forced confidence. She read the first page, examined the seal, and placed it on the altar. "This contract will be reviewed after the ceremony. Until then, Emily Carter stands here by her own will." Ethan led Emily beneath the arch of pale moonstones. The priestess wrapped a narrow silver ribbon loosely around their joined hands. "Do you enter this union freely?" she asked. "I do," Emily said. Ethan's answer followed, deep and unwavering. "I do." The priestess began the ancient vow, and Emily listened carefully for the words that would end their marriage at dawn. They never came. "Before the moon, before the kingdom, and before the truth within your own hearts, you are joined until the moon itself releases you." Emily turned sharply toward Ethan. His jaw had tightened, and for one brief instant, gold flickered through his blue eyes. The air around them seemed to hum. Somewhere deep inside Emily, a presence she had believed silent stirred at the sound of his name. Ethan released a slow breath, mastering whatever had awakened within him. Emily mistook his restraint for regret. The priestess placed a ring in his hand, but before he could lift it, the moonstones above them burst into silver light. The priestess stared at their joined hands, her composure finally breaking. "Your Majesty," she whispered, "the bond has already begun." The silver light faded from the moonstones, but the silence it left behind felt heavier than thunder. Emily stared at the ribbon around her hand, then at Ethan, searching his face for an explanation. "What bond?" she asked. The moon priestess did not answer immediately. She stepped closer to the altar, her gray eyes fixed on the faint silver glow beneath Emily's skin. "A possibility," she said at last. "Nothing more can be declared until the ancient law is satisfied." Mason moved forward, relief sharpening his expression. "Then the marriage is not valid." Ethan turned his head, and Mason stopped several feet from the altar. The king did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Choose your next words carefully." Mason lifted the contract. "The covenant of free hearts requires proof when an existing claim is challenged. 3 proofs before dawn. If they fail, Emily returns to Silver Creek under her father's agreement." Emily felt the warmth leave her face. She looked toward the high windows. The moon had already crossed half the sky. Dawn was only hours away. The priestess placed both hands on the altar. "The law is clear. First, both hearts must choose freely. Second, both wolves must recognize the union. Third, one must willingly surrender something of value to protect the other." Emily's gaze dropped to the floor. Her wolf had been silent for years. No healer had explained why. No ceremony had awakened it. How could she prove that it accepted anyone when she could not even feel it? Ethan seemed to read the fear she tried to hide. "I can end this challenge," he said. "How?" "By royal decree." Mason gave a humorless laugh. "You mean by threatening every pack that questions you?" Ethan ignored him. His attention remained on Emily. "Say the word and the contract disappears." For one tempting second she imagined it. Mason silenced. The document destroyed. The doors opened. Freedom handed to her by the most powerful man in the kingdom. Then she remembered what Ethan had asked before the ceremony. Protection or the right to choose. "No," she said. Surprise moved through the hall. Even Ethan's expression shifted. Emily drew a steady breath. "If you erase the contract because you are king, Mason will tell everyone I escaped one powerful man by hiding behind another. I will spend the rest of my life wondering whether I was free or merely transferred. Mason's smile returned. At least she understands her place. Emily faced him. I understand it better than you do. My place is wherever I choose to stand. The words trembled at the edges, but they did not break. Ethan's eyes warmed with something deeper than approval. Respect. Then we proved the truth, he said. The priestess untied the silver ribbon. The first proof cannot be completed through words alone. Choice must remain when fear, rank, and obligation are removed. And the second? Emily asked. Your wolves must meet before sunrise. Emily swallowed. Mine does not speak to me. Mason spread his hands as if the matter were settled. Then she has already failed. A strange pressure moved through Emily's chest. Not pain, not fear. A quiet pulse, distant but unmistakable. Ethan heard her sudden breath. Emily. She pressed her palm over her heart. Deep within the silence she had carried for years, something opened its eyes. Then a voice, soft as snow falling through pine trees, whispered one word inside her mind. Ethan. Emily lowered her hand from her chest, but the echo of Ethan's name remained inside her like a bell heard across a frozen valley. He stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. What did you hear? He asked. She looked toward Mason, who was watching with open suspicion, then toward the moon priestess. Nothing I understand yet. The priestess studied her for a long moment. Then give the voice room to return. The second proof cannot be forced. Ethan dismissed the gathering until the final hearing, ordering the council to reconvene 1 hour before sunrise. Mason protested, but the guards opened a clear path to the doors, and the watching nobles slowly followed. Emily expected Ethan to take her to a guarded chamber and leave her there. Instead, he walked beside her through a quiet corridor lined with tall windows, matching his pace to hers. Beyond the glass, the palace grounds stretched beneath the moon-white stone paths winding between dark pines and sleeping gardens. You do not have to tell me what happened in the hall, he said. Not until you are ready. Emily glanced at him. You are not going to demand an answer? A demand would make it useless. Before she could respond, a young servant hurried around the corner carrying a tray of tea. He saw the king, stumbled, and sent a silver cup rolling across the floor. The boy went pale. Your Majesty, I am sorry. Ethan bent, picked up the cup and placed it back on the tray. No one was harmed, he said. Bring another pot when your hands stop shaking. The servant stared at him, then nodded and hurried away. Emily had heard stories of the Blackwood King's temper since childhood. None of them mentioned patience. They reached a small courtyard at the center of the royal wing, where a soft whine came from beneath a stone bench. Ethan stopped immediately. A wolf pup no larger than a house cat crouched in the shadows, one front paw held above the ground. A guard approached. It belongs to one of the kitchen workers, Your Majesty. It slipped through the gate. Ethan removed his formal coat and knelt on the cold stone, ignoring the dust on his dark trousers. Easy, he murmured. The pup backed away from him, frightened by the power in his scent. Emily felt warmth gather in her palms. May I try? Ethan moved aside without hesitation. She crouched several feet from the pup and held out one hand. You are safe, she whispered. The little wolf watched her, trembling. Inside Emily, the quiet presence stirred again. Not with words this time, but with instinct. She softened her breathing and waited. Slowly, the pup limped forward and rested its paw in her palm. Silver light spread beneath her skin. It flowed gently around the swollen joint, warm as morning sunlight. The pup relaxed, then placed its paw on the ground without pain. The guard gasped. Ethan did not. He was staring at the crescent-shaped glow on Emily's wrist, his expression suddenly grave. That mark, he said. Your mother's family. What was their name? Carter, Emily answered. Before that, she searched her memory. My grandmother once used the name Vale. Ethan rose very slowly. The moon healers of Vale disappeared 25 years ago. Emily looked down at her glowing hand. That is impossible. From the balcony above, hidden behind a marble pillar, a shadow moved away. Neither of them saw the messenger hurry toward the eastern stairs with one urgent sentence already forming in his mind. She has awakened. Emily could not look away from the silver crescent glowing beneath her skin. My mother never told me, she said. Ethan's expression remained calm, but something colder entered his eyes. Perhaps she was trying to keep you hidden. The healed pup circled Emily's feet once before returning to the guard, its tail moving happily. Ethan guided her from the courtyard and into a private library behind the royal council chamber. Shelves rose nearly 20 feet toward a painted ceiling, filled with records from every pack under the crown. He unlocked a narrow cabinet and removed a leather-bound registry marked with the seal of Silver Creek. The Vale healers did not disappear without reason, he said. Their gift could restore damaged land, purify poisoned water, and strengthen the natural bond between a pack and its territory. Powerful families tried to control them. Emily felt a quiet chill despite the fire burning nearby. Mason knew. It was not a question. Ethan opened the registry to a page bearing her mother's name. Beside it was a note added only 6 months earlier, identifying Emily as the final known descendant of the Vale line. The handwriting belonged to Mason. Suddenly, every polished apology he had offered made sense. He had not returned because he regretted rejecting her. He had returned because he had learned what she could do. Silver Creek has been failing for years, Ethan said. Their wells are turning bitter. Crops are weakening. Families are leaving. He said it was a curse. That is what he wants the neighboring packs to believe. Ethan placed another document beside the registry. It contained reports from royal surveyors who had found traces of an illegal mining compound beneath Silver Creek's northern ridge. The substance had seeped into the soil and water. Mason's family had authorized the operation, then concealed it to protect their position. Emily read the final line twice. Only a Vale healer may be capable of restoring the territory. Her hands grew cold. He rejected me when he thought I was useless, then forged my father's agreement when he discovered I was valuable. Ethan's voice softened. Your worth did not change. His knowledge did. The truth hurt more because it was so simple. Mason had never seen her as a person. First she had been an embarrassment. Now she was a solution. A knock sounded at the library door. Claire Donovan entered, carrying a sealed envelope. The royal archivist found the original witness to the Carter Agreement, she said. A former Silver Creek clerk named Thomas Reed. He claims Emily's father never signed it. Hope rose quickly, then stopped when Claire's expression darkened. Where is he? Ethan asked. He was brought to the palace an hour ago, but he never reached the council chamber. His escort found the eastern passage empty. Ethan immediately called for the guards, but Emily noticed something near the envelope in Claire's hand. A faint smear of silver dust marked one corner. The same dust had fallen from the messenger's boots when he crossed the courtyard balcony. The quiet presence inside Emily stirred, urging her toward the window. Below, beyond the palace wall, moonlight touched a narrow path leading toward the forbidden forest. On the white stone beneath the window, a trail of dark red drops disappeared between the trees. Ethan, Emily whispered, pointing toward the path. Someone took the witness into the forest. The trail beneath the library window led beyond the palace wall and into the forbidden forest, where the moonlight narrowed between tall pines and the air smelled of wet earth and cold stone. Ethan ordered 6 royal guards to follow at a distance, then turned to Emily. You stay beside me. She almost objected, but the quiet presence inside her was pulling her forward with growing urgency. The drops on the path became faint silver sparks that only she seemed able to see. Thomas Reed came this way, she said. How can you know? I can feel that he is frightened. Ethan studied her face, then nodded as though her answer was enough. They walked nearly half a mile before the forest opened around an abandoned watchtower. A weak voice came from inside. Please, is someone there? Ethan moved toward the doorway, but Emily caught his sleeve. Thin lines of blue light had been drawn across the entrance, almost invisible beneath the ivy. It is a ward, she whispered. It reacts to royal blood. The moment Ethan stepped back, the lines dimmed. From inside the tower, Thomas coughed and called Emily's name. Miss Carter, the contract is false. I have the original record. A shadow shifted among the trees. Then a voice echoed from somewhere beyond the clearing. Leave the witness and no one needs to be harmed. Ethan's expression hardened. Show yourself. No one answered. Instead, the blue ward brightened and spread across the ground like frost. The guards were forced back as a wall of pale light rose between the tower and the forest path. Ethan reached for Emily's hand. "Return to the palace. Now. What about you? I will bring Thomas out. The ward responds to you. Then I will find another way." The calmness in his voice frightened her more than panic would have. He was willing to remain trapped in the clearing so she could leave safely. Ethan opened a narrow passage through the light with his authority, creating just enough space for Emily to escape. "Run," he said. She obeyed for 3 steps. Then the voice inside her rose, clear and certain. "Turn back." Emily stopped. All her life, powerful people had decided what she should fear, where she should stand, and when she should disappear. Ethan had done none of those things. Even now, he was giving her a path to safety at his own cost. She turned around. "Emily," he warned, "I am not leaving you here." The ward surged between them, but she placed both palms against its surface. Cold rushed through her arms. She closed her eyes and thought of the frightened wolf pup, the bitter wells of Silver Creek, and the man who had asked for her choice instead of demanding her obedience. Silver light unfolded from her hands. It did not break the ward. Changed it. The blue barrier softened into a clear arch wide enough for Ethan and the guards to pass through. A glowing crescent appeared above Emily, joined by a second symbol shaped like a royal crown. Ethan stared at it. "The Luna seal," he whispered. Together they entered the tower and found Thomas seated against the wall, shaken but safe, clutching a leather record book to his chest. "Mason's people wanted this destroyed," he said. "It proves your father refused the agreement." Emily helped him stand, but a distant bell rang from the palace. 1 hour remained before sunrise. Ethan looked at the seal still shining above her. "You came back for me." Emily met his eyes. "I chose to." The final hearing began while the eastern sky was still dark, and every seat in the royal court was filled. Emily stood beside Ethan beneath the high silver windows, with Thomas Reed and Claire Donovan waiting near the council table. The leather record book rested before the Moon Priestess, its pages proving that Emily's father had refused Mason's agreement years ago. Yet Mason entered the chamber smiling as though the truth had not already turned against him. "A clerk's testimony does not settle a challenge between pacts," he said. "The old law gives me the right to defend my claim." Emily felt Ethan grow still beside her. "She is not your claim," he replied. Mason lifted his chin toward the gathered alphas. "Then prove your marriage through the traditional contest. Face me before the court. The winner keeps the bond." Uneasy whispers moved through the chamber. Emily understood Mason's plan at once. If Ethan accepted, she would become a prize awarded to the stronger man. If he refused, Mason would call him afraid and question the marriage before every pack in the kingdom. Ethan stepped away from the throne. For one breath, Emily expected him to accept. Instead, he removed the black crown from his head and placed it on the council table. Then he unfastened the ceremonial sword at his side and laid it beside the crown. The court fell silent. "I will not compete for a woman who belongs only to herself," he said. Mason's smile weakened. "You would surrender your royal honor for an Omega you met tonight?" Ethan looked at Emily, and the power in his expression softened without disappearing. "Honor that requires her silence is not honor." He turned toward the Moon Priestess. "Let the record show that I surrender my right to settle this through rank, title, or challenge." The priestess lowered her head. "The first proof demands a choice free from fear and obligation." Ethan descended the final step until he stood on the same level as Emily. No throne behind him. No crown above him. Only a man waiting for her answer. "Choose Emily," he said. "You may stay. You may return to Silver Creek. You may leave us both and begin somewhere neither of us can follow without your permission." Mason laughed, but the sound was thin. "She has nowhere else to go." Ethan never looked away from her. "Then the kingdom will provide land, money, and protection without requiring marriage in return." Emily's breath caught. He was offering freedom even if it cost him the bond his wolf already recognized. The quiet presence inside her stirred with warmth, but Ethan made no attempt to use it against her. Mason extended his hand. "Come home, Emily. We can forget this humiliation." Home. The word once would have pulled her backward. Now it sounded like a locked room. Emily looked at Thomas, at the false contract, and at the king who had set down every symbol of power so her answer could truly be her own. Then she began walking. A murmur rose as she passed Ethan. His face remained composed, though something wounded flickered in his eyes. Mason's confidence returned with every step she took toward him. He opened his arms as if victory were already his. Emily stopped directly in front of him and reached for the document in his hand. Emily took the document from Mason's hand, and for the first time since he had returned to her life, he looked uncertain. "Give that back," he said. His voice was quiet, but the command inside it was familiar. Years ago, that tone would have made her apologize before she understood what she had done wrong. Now she unfolded the paper and held it beneath the silver light of the court. "You called this my father's promise," she said. "You used his memory to make me doubt my own right to choose." Mason glanced toward the watching alphas. "Emily, this is not the place. You made it the place when you brought the contract here." She tore the paper once slowly from the royal seal to the false signature. The sound was small, yet it carried through the silent chamber. Mason's face lost its practiced calm. Emily let the pieces fall at his feet. "I, Emily Carter, reject every chain you ever called love." A pale silver glow spread across the floor beneath her shoes. Mason stepped forward. "You do not understand what Silver Creek needs." "I understand perfectly," she replied. "You did not return because you loved me. You returned because you learned what my blood could repair." Thomas Reed approached the council table and opened the leather record book. His hands still trembled from the night, but his voice remained clear. He presented the original refusal signed by Emily's father, the mining permits approved by Mason's family, and the survey reports showing that the poison beneath Silver Creek had come from their own operation. Claire placed a final letter beside the records. It carried instructions to hide the damaged wells, blame an ancient curse, and locate the last descendant of the Veil Healers. Mason stared at the evidence as though the pages had betrayed him. "I was trying to save my pack. By deceiving them," Emily said. "By turning their fear into your power. By treating me as medicine you could own." Murmurs spread through the court. Several Silver Creek elders lowered their heads, no longer willing to meet Mason's eyes. He reached toward Emily, but before his hand came near her, the royal guard stepped between them as one. No command had been spoken. Ethan had not moved. The guard simply chose to protect her. Behind them, servants, council members, and visiting healers rose from their seats. Emily recognized the young servant from the hallway, and the guard whose wolf pup she had healed. They were not standing because she wore the king's ring. They were standing because they had seen who she was when no reward had been promised. Mason looked around the chamber and finally understood that the room no longer belonged to his version of the truth. The Moon Priestess closed the record book. "The false claim is void. Mason Hale will answer before the council for fraud, unlawful confinement, and harm done to Silver Creek territory." Mason tried to protest, but the elders of his own pack stepped away from him. Ethan remained beside the abandoned throne, his crown and sword still resting on the table. He had given Emily the choice, and she had used it without borrowing his authority. The priestess turned toward the high windows. The darkness outside had softened to deep blue. "Two proofs have been witnessed," she announced. The heart chose freely, and sacrifice was offered without command. Emily looked at Ethan. Hope appeared in his eyes, guarded and quiet. "Only one proof remains," the priestess continued. "Before the first light reaches this chamber, their wolves must recognize each other." A distant bell began to ring. Emily felt the sleeping presence inside her rise, stronger than ever. Then the Moon Priestess opened the doors to the moonlit courtyard and said, "Let the wolves decide." The courtyard lay beneath the fading moon, its white stones washed in silver and the first hint of dawn. Emily stood at the center while the court watched from the open doors behind her. Ethan remained several feet away, giving her the same thing he had offered from the beginning: space, choice. "I will not call my wolf unless you are ready," he said. Emily pressed one hand over her heart. The presence within her was no longer a distant whisper. It felt warm, patient, and entirely her own. "I am ready." Ethan closed his eyes. A quiet wave of power moved through the courtyard. and where the king had stood, a great black wolf appeared beneath the moonlight. He did not approach her. He lowered his head and waited. Emily felt no fear. Silver light gathered around her, soft as mist across a lake. Her human form gave way to a small silver she-wolf with pale blue eyes and a crescent marking over her heart. She was not as large as Ethan's wolf. She did not need to be. She stepped forward without bowing. The black wolf remained still until she crossed the final foot between them. Then Emily touched her forehead to his. Light spread across the courtyard in a widening circle, reaching the palace walls just as the last stars disappeared. The moon priestess smiled. The wolves have chosen freely. The bond was real. Yet when Emily returned to her human form, Ethan did not claim victory. He removed the ring from her hand and placed it gently in her palm. The agreement was for one day, he said. The gates are open. No guard will follow you. No law will hold you. The first bell of sunrise rang as Emily walked through the palace entrance. She crossed the outer courtyard and stopped beyond the gates, where the sky had turned gold above the pine-covered hills. For the first time, no person, promise, or pack owned the road ahead of her. She was free. Behind her, Ethan stood alone without his crown. He believed she was leaving, and still he honored her choice. Emily looked at the ring in her hand. She had asked for one day because one day was all the kindness she believed she deserved. She turned and walked back through the open gates. Ethan's guarded expression broke when she stopped before him and placed the ring on her own finger. One day gave me my freedom, she said. Forever will be my choice. The second bell rang across the kingdom, and the new Luna took the Alpha King's hand.